So we've had a bit over a month to process Disenchantment Part 3 and its many cliffhangers, and I thought now might be a good time to try and work through another theory I have for the future of the series. Now admittedly, this one doesn't quite have as much evidence as my Mop Girl theory, plug, but I do think there's something to it, and I want to gauge what y'all think too. And of course, spoilers ahead for all 3 parts of Disenchantment. So here's the idea. I think that maybe there's a chance that Luci will become the new ruler of Hell. What? How? Why? Well, let's dive into it. So this theory honestly stems from 2 things, and the first is pretty obvious. Luci's name, L-U-C-I. The name Luci clearly stems from the name Lucifer, just a clever little shortening for our favorite little demon. The second is the origins of the Lucifer myth and how it seemingly could tie to where Luci left off at the end of Part 3. In many versions of the myth, Lucifer actually fell from heaven before becoming the ruler of Hell. Basically, he was striving to take the place of God and was subsequently cast down. Well, that's one version. There are many takes on the myth, but this is the most common interpretation in Christianity, and with Disenchantment's pretty standard portrayal of the Christian heaven and hell, I think it's pretty fair to assume that this is what they're alluding to. So how does that tie into the story at hand? Well, the end of Disenchantment Part 3 shows Luci actually get killed during Dagmar's kidnapping of Bean, and seemingly due to his heroic sacrifice, he awakens in heaven instead of hell. What a twist! But he sure doesn't seem happy about it.
Welcome to heaven, Luci.
Hell no!
So I guess the question is, with what we know about the actual Lucifer myth, could this be the series setting the stage for Luci's descent from heaven into hell to potentially become the new ruler of the underworld, like Lucifer himself? It feels pretty fitting for the series, and I have a few reasons for that story-wise too, so let's jump into why I think this might work. For one, it could tie directly to Bean's cliffhanger as well. I think that the events of the Part 3 finale were likely all coordinated by Dagmar in order to get Bean to hell. She sold Zog the Freckles puppet, which led to his expulsion from Dreamland. I think she probably also tipped off the ogres that Elfo was in Dreamland, leading to their attack. And she used the confusion to kidnap Bean and take her down this elevator to hell. This obviously ties to the overdue contract that Maru has with hell. We've seen Dagmar's obsession with Bean's role in fulfilling this contract.
There's a prophecy to be fulfilled, our fame and fortune to be restored, a debt to hell that we're really overdue on.
So let's talk about what the contract might actually be and its historical context. I believe that Maru made a contract with hell in order to attack and destroy the kingdom of Cremora, of which they were both envious of and in constant danger from due to their snake-based economy's threat to their mouse-based economy. I know that sounds very silly, but it's all true. We see that in modern times, Maru actually uses snakes, likely stolen after conquering Cremora.
Watch out! Messenger Viper.
But we also know that Maru had no army and had to resort to magic to destroy Cremora.
Maru decided to attack Cremora, but with no army they were forced to resort to magic.
So the question is, how did Maru obtain this magic? Well, I think the answer is clear. They made a contract with Hell, which granted them magic. I think there's quite a bit of evidence of this too. For one, when you look back at all of these portraits of former Maruvian leaders, some of them bear this ancient symbol that seems to be associated with Hell and also looks like Hell's demons. Other portraits in this hallway do not have any indication that they're related to this symbol. If this symbol had always been a part of Maruvian history, you'd expect it to be on all of the portraits. But if it was introduced later in their history, after a contract with Hell was made, it would only be in the portraits that came after said contract. The magic that the Maruvians have access to seems to be really powerful as well. This magical fire can literally contact anyone, anywhere, including both heaven and hell.
Elfo? Is that you?
Lady, you're the one that called me.
It's hard to imagine that this magic didn't come from an otherworldly place if it can actually contact heaven itself. The Maruvians were also the ones who sent Luci to Bean, so they somehow have access to these demons, or at least one of them. Plus, this could also tie to the electric magic we've seen from Bean as well. The first time we saw this type of magic was actually from Cloyd and Becky. Becky uses this electric magic through the magical fire to control Luci.
Conceal thyself, demon!
We've seen this magic used in 3 different ways overall: the aforementioned demon control, some type of teleportation in Part 3 Episode 2, and then of course Bean short-circuiting these robots and blacking out Steamland later in Part 3. But the fact that the magic can seemingly control Luci definitely implies some sort of connection to Hell. So what do the Maruvians owe Hell in exchange for the magic? Well, I think the answer is clear from the Part 3 finale.
The bride has arrived.
Dagmar refers to Bean as the bride, and I expect that this means the contract stipulates that Bean must be married off to the devil himself. A lot of people speculate that this is Alva from Dreamland, and I think there may be some connection, but I don't think it's specifically him down there in hell. Their body size and shape are a little bit different, and they specifically have the hair of this character in the shape of horns, so I think the implication is definitely that it's the devil himself. So I guess by now you might be asking, how does this tie into the Luci ruler of hell theory? Well, Bean's gotta be let out of the contract somehow, right? So here's what I'm thinking. Luci has now given up his demon powers and mortality, hence why he died and was sent to heaven. But I'm very curious what this might mean for him. I expect he's the very first instance of a demon going to heaven. I think it's possible that this might grant him some new capabilities, or perhaps it might actually protect him from being controlled by anything hell-related. He is the first heavenly demon, or maybe God himself will grant him with some new types of abilities now that he's ascended. But I think, given that his name is short for Lucifer, we can expect him to fall from heaven in one way or another. I could see this being an intentional ploy like Elfo back in part 2.
Screw you, God! Did you hear that? Send me to hell, sunshine!
Or I could see it as being a plan allowed by God himself in order for Luci to save Bean. Either way, because of the Lucifer myth, I think Luci will fall from heaven and re-enter hell. But I also think that if we're tying Luci to the Lucifer myth, this gives us real reason to believe that he will be the new ruler of hell somehow. And from a story standpoint, Luci taking over hell in order to usurp the devil himself and then free Bean from her ancestral hell contract actually makes a lot of sense. And I've got one more little piece of speculation alongside it, so bear with me. This might be a tiny bit of a stretch, but we also saw that Luci, Elfo, and Bean combined are seemingly some type of mythical saviors, at least according to the Trogs. But why is it these three? Well, I think it's possible that all three of them represent different aspects of this world's lore. Heaven, hell, and the world as we know it. Bean could represent the earthly aspect of this triumvirate, while Luci obviously represents hell, but I think that Elfo could also represent heaven, as not only did he spend time there, but he is also pretty explicitly stated as truly belonging there.
Your noble intent far outweighs your benign choir boy swearing. You know, no one belongs in heaven more than you.
These are the words of God himself, no less. Is it possible that Elfo will ascend to a higher position in heaven later down the line? I'm very curious if this heroic trifecta of Bean, Luci, and Elfo actually represents their connections to Earth, Hell, and Heaven, respectively. And honestly, that's pretty much all I got for this one. So what do y'all think? Are they following the Lucifer myth closely, or do you think it's just a name? And how will Bean be saved from this hellish fate? Give me your thoughts below in the comments. If you like this video, liking and subscribing really helps, and stay tuned for the next one. Peace.
Johnny to Cellos!